Minister, since your appointment in July 2024 until 31st of December 2024, did you get the opportunity to have Mr. Murray, Colonel Murray, presenting his work studies to you, both the 2019 and the 2024?
No.
No. So it is you who's interpreting the two documents. You're doing that on your own. He did not give you a briefing on those two documents.
Yes.
I'm going to put to you, Minister, that you are misinterpreting what Colonel Murray said in both his work studies, and you are incorrectly using those work studies to justify your decision to disband the PKTT. Because nowhere in any of those work studies did Colonel Murray say the PKTT must be banded. What is your answer?
My answer is that in the conceptualization of specialized units, it was expressly said that the proliferation or the existence of a number of task teams is not ideal. In other words, is not an ideal situation within SAPS. Let's establish specialized units. And when they established specialized units, right from 2019, right in 2024, even in their assessments, they then established one of those units at a level called serious and violent crimes. It is in the structure from 2019, especially in 2020. I showed you the structure. And in that, or under that, serious and violent crimes, you have what they call the section. The section is called murder and robbery. And under that murder and robbery, as mandates thereof, they put sub-units. One of the sub-units that they put there is political killings. And of course, police killings, which we identified clearly yesterday. So it is expressed, not interpreted. It is expressed in black and white throughout 2019 and 2024. It's written down. And I did indicate that I had a chat with former Commissioner Stoll on the matters who indicated similar views when we had a chat on these matters.
So if PKTT is a unit within the murder and robbery unit, it's a structure within, how does that square up with his disbandment? Because surely then all that means is that it will exist, but it will form part of the murder and robbery unit. So it will be a team within the murder and robbery unit. How does that square up with its disbandment?
It square ups in the sense that it will cease to exist in the form that it is existing now. You would take the model, you would take some of the personnel, you would take some of the experience into the new specialized unit. But it tells you that they can coexist. You can't have murder and robbery, and then you have on your right hand side, you have PKTT. Mind you, in the new setup, when we come in, we discover, if I could use that word, that there are 4 provinces that are a problem in the whole country. It's not one where PKTT is based in, which is KZN. Your problem in terms of the views of the new administration is that you are preventing investment in the country. They say South Africa is ugly because of a high rate of murders, specific. And people don't feel, they are not made to feel safe. Now, you can then take that to mean in KZN. You mean in the main, you mean in the whole country, but in the main, in the 4 provinces, then what it means is that PKTT needs to be part now of the newly established, which is futuristic, which is not temporal, which is sustainable and budgeted for. You need to put it in the structure that is now has been processed all the time. That's where these two things fit in. They can't coexist. That's number one. And you are looking at sustainability. You are removing the temporal nature, but you are not firing people. You are not. At some point, I said to myself, maybe I shouldn't have used the word disband. I should have used integration or absorption. But that was with retrospect, because maybe it would have been understood better than what is happening, but that's exactly what it meant.
Minister, I'm going to suggest to you that that does not square up with the thrust of your evidence, which is that the PKTT is set up by the IMC, the Interministerial Committee, and therefore it can only be disbanded by a minister or by that committee. Now, if you have studies that only go to a national commissioner and his subordinates, and they adopt the recommendations in those studies, the suggestion, if that's your suggestion, that the adoption of those recommendations can override an IMC decision that there must exist a PKTT, that does not make sense to me. Because if IMC says there must be a PKTT because the president has said so, and it must continue to exist, what is the relevance of a study that is approved by a national commissioner and his subordinates? Because on your version, the minister establishes the PKTT and only the minister can disband it.
I did yesterday indicate, and I'm still indicating, that the work study, the National Political Killings Task Team was meant to exist for 6 months. It is clearly indicated and written down. Hence, the assessment in December to say, do we do away with it or it continues to exist? They decide, that is the IMC. It must continue to exist based on the submissions and all of that, I suppose, of the steering committee. Then in January, they then say, okay, it must exist, but for the next 6 months, not permanent. Not permanent. They say another 6 months. Then it's extended and funded. And then after 6 months, they now say the extension must now take a year. Because if we assess the establishment of specialized units, especially murder and robbery, which would absorb PKTT, it's not yet that time. Then they extend it. That is why another assessment comes 2021, 2022. It's because these things were parallel.
When you made the decision to disband the PKTT, which you say you decided on the 29th finally, that you're going to disband the unit, what did you know at that point about the strength of the murder and robbery units, not just in KZN, because remember this is a national task team, as you tell us. So it may be based in KZN, but it's a national team. What did you know about the strength of the murder and robbery units across the country at that time?
I knew that, with the exception of Northern Cape, they had been established and that they were functional. We had not yet focused on what exactly in detail in Limpopo or in KZN or in Gauteng, but they were at different levels. What I know is that that was the only concern that was the only I would say, issue that we need to beef up, we need to strengthen via a number of things, training, equipping. Myself, I was even talking about what we ended up doing in the structure itself, a new division, separate division from what's combined in Vispol, so that even those specialized units, you back them up, especially in the 4 provinces, because even by that time, December, I thought I had come to quite a satisfactory level of understanding the trends of violent crimes, especially in the 4 provinces. So I may not have known in detail, but I knew they exist. Yes. In terms of reports that were presented.
Yes, you knew they existed. You disband on the basis that the work that the PKTT was doing can be done by murder and robbery units. That's the basis on which you disband.
Yes.
But you don't know anything about the strengths of those units in the country. So your decision to disband could possibly have the consequence that, in fact, the units that have been established can't do this work, because at that point, they don't have the capability yet. They haven't recruited the people. They don't have the right trained people. How is that a considered decision that ensures that investigations, prosecutions of political killings or political murders continue across the country after your decision on the 31st, from the 1st of January, actually?
Based on the reports, especially when we reviewed the structure with officials confirming that they exist, and it was actually written down, notwithstanding the fact that they were not necessarily individually examined, but based on those presentations and based on the absence which would have been made to say we do have, but it is weak or something, which was done in the case of Northern Cape to say it doesn't exist. And based on my visits as well to provinces, including, all provinces except for Free State and Northwest and Northern Cape, I would say I was fairly aware that they were there, and this was to be reinforced after by information that I got.
I don't have a difficulty with a part of your evidence where you say you were told they do exist. I'm talking about their effectiveness and capability. And maybe let me do it by way of example. By the time you disbanded, you made the decision on the 29th of December to disband the PKTT. Had you had a discussion or a report from, and I use KZN randomly, I could be using Free State, so you can substitute. Had you had a report from KZN about the capabilities of their murder and robbery unit, their strength, their capability, and a general ability to deal with political killings? And when I say KZN, I'm asking the same question about Limpopo, Gauteng, Mpumalanga. Had you received any of those reports about their ability from the provinces themselves?
Now, I would say initially, when we were doing the review of the structure, we did receive a report of their existence. Now, we're talking beyond that. Now, we went to provinces, including KZN, including Limpopo, including Gauteng. We did find out and saw people that they are in murder and robbery. We did receive those additional reports. But I do want to say It was not necessarily to say we're in KZN today to examine just one unit, that is support services, for instance, or VSPOL. It was not in that particular fashion, but we were satisfied with I was satisfied with the report of existence and what I had received, or we had received when we visited those particular provinces. But I do want to add, not necessarily with a view to wanting to exonerate myself from that scrutiny by saying that even despite the fact that we had not gone into detail about what was happening, you remember that we were arguing yesterday that the letter of disbandment still called for preliminary report. And indeed, when that report came, it did say, even though it had not come when we reported, it came later on the 22nd, it says, the National Political Killings Task Team in KZN would be absorbed into serious and violent crimes in KZN, which was evidence that it is known to exist. It may be at that strength or at another strength.
Maybe let me conclude it because I'm trying to understand what your answer is to my question. I'm going to ask it differently.
Yes.
Is there a record in the SAPS or in the ministry which shows whether it's a minute or of a meeting or a report, which shows that before you made the decision on the 29th of December, you were provided with information by the provinces about their readiness, which led to your decision that they are ready and able to take over, that murder and robbery in those provinces is ready and able to deal with the work that the political killings task team was doing? I'm asking that kind of simple question, that do we have verifiable evidence that you were provided with that information and you had that information when you made your decision that it is not necessary to have the PKTT because our murder and robbery units across the country are sufficiently capacitated at that stage to take over this important function?
There is the Marai report of March 2024. And over and above that, when we were reviewing the structure, we did get presentations. I may not be precise in terms of the level of detail on units, especially murder and robbery, in all provinces. But I know that there was confirmation, as I've said, of their existence, and no concern was raised at the time that they presented. There was a feeling that, or there were presentations that said, we do have...
Minister, I don't quarrel with their existence, and it's not my question. My question is not whether you satisfied yourself that they existed. It's not that. It's a completely different question. It is, you satisfied yourself because of information given to you that those units across the provinces are in a position to carry on the work that was being done by the PKTT. That's what I'm asking. But you've referred to the Marai report, so I'll leave it to Ms. Sillo to talk us through the Marai report and point us to where it says that. Thank you.
And also to when we're reviewing the structure.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sillo.
Baloyi just engaged you on. I don't know if you are aware that General Mutsipe appeared before the commission and she has submitted a statement.
I am aware.
General Mutsipe, as I understand, is the component head of serious and violent crimes, of which murder and robbery is a part. Is my understanding correct?
It's correct.
At paragraph 20 of her statement, she noted that although the murder and robbery structure was in place, the units were not properly capacitated. That's her testimony. In fact, the very engagement you just heard with Commissioner Baloyi had with General Mutsipe, during her testimony on the 17th of November 2025, this reference I made was to paragraph 20 of General Mutsipe's statement, where she says the structure was there, but there was no capacity. And she confirms that here in the hearing through her engagement with Commissioner Baloyi. So, according to the component head responsible for murder and robbery, as at the time of disbandment, that, can I call it a unit? Murder and robbery, yes, unit, did not have the capacity. The structure was in place, but there was no capacity. Hearing what you do now, do you think that disbanding the PKTT in circumstances where political killings could flare up ahead of the 2026 local elections was a wise decision?
Commissioners, in the context that I'll come exactly to your question, but I just want to say first a preamble. In the context of what would practically happen when you disband or when you reconfigure PKTT, it would mean in practice integrating what is there currently. You would take what is there in PKTT, what is there or not there in murder and robbery, because going together with the establishment of specialized units was to ensure that SAPS has greater capacity that is sustainable. So there is nothing preventing me from saying, yes, General Mutsipe, component head, may have said that, but if in the process of integrating, you were not going to throw people and they become unemployed and all of that, you were going to integrate them. I have no doubt that this would result into the required capacity once integrated.
Minister, how do you arrive at that conclusion? Because you did not know how the integration would take place. So how can you say, if the unit is disbanded or if the team is disbanded, then I know that it would result in the murder and robbery unit being properly capacitated? How do you arrive at that conclusion?
I arrived at that conclusion because in the reports and in the assessments, including implementation assessments, latest 2024, that's exactly what they were saying. That when we fully establish serious and violent crimes, that's why they even wrote qualification levels of people who must be recruited or whatever in the murder and robbery. Everything was there. Payment, equipment, and all of those things. So reading that report, I know police knew what it would take to establish, and they had it written down and assessed twice. And I did say earlier, there was a letter implementation letter in 2024, but which unfortunately National Commissioner did not sign for a year up until this year. He only signed in 2025 saying it must be expedited. It means that the implementation letter that was signed by all other officials, all other officers, except for the National Commissioner in 2024, they were satisfied that the specialized units have reached a point where they could, in their criteria, be functional. That's why they signed them for implementation, not establishment. And then they forwarded that to the Office of the National Commissioner, who then for a year didn't sign. So that's how you would have established that, or I established that. Go ahead.
So you seem to have had a different idea that people will be seamlessly integrated into the murder and robbery unit, but your divisional, your deputy National Commissioner for Detectives, I think that's what he is, his instruction is everyone who was in the PKTT, go home, go back to your stations. That's not to integrate them into the murder and robbery units in their provinces. So it seems you and General Sibiya had different ideas about this. And for me, that's part of the problem that naturally follows from a failure to speak to your managers about your intention and how you see it playing out. That here's my thinking about it. You just gave an instruction, you let them execute. Well, Sibiya does what he thinks is best. He calls for dockets, and then he says to people, go back to your stations. So their murder and robbery units in the provinces do not benefit from your decision on the basis of Sibiya's instruction.
Now, the understanding that is written down black and white, including after the effect, was that they would be re-recruited, if I could use that, into serious and violent crimes, including in documents on the 5th and 6th. So this is now from the National Commission, not from Sibiya. What Sibiya subsequently says could loosely be interpreted as to say, if you were from Limpopo and you are in PKTT, in KZN, you would go back to your province, but to murder and robbery.
Minister, no, we can't do that. Please don't do that. Sibiya's letter doesn't do that. It doesn't. It says, go back to your station. That's it. Please accept that's what it says. Let's not try and reconstruct it. He may come back. He will come and testify. Maybe he'll tell us what his intention was, but you cannot. You can't interpret it to suit your evidence now. It's just wrong to do that.
I understand, but my primary reliance is on the reports that we received, as I say, which indicate that members of PKTT would be absorbed into serious and violent crimes.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.
My difficulty is where, notwithstanding any concerns you may have, you direct that you freeze all posts in that division. That is the part I consider to be interference, regardless of any concerns you may have had, and you were well within your power to raise your concerns with the National Commissioner. Why must you freeze the post? Did you consider the impact on the functioning of SAPS on that score alone, let alone my argument that you didn't even have the power to issue such a directive? Do you maintain you did?
No, on time, we are on the 31st, and I'm contemplating that we'll have discussions at the beginning of the year on something that we broadly needed to correct, a discussion with crime intelligence, which I considered within my authority. The reason for this, in part, when you go to account in the Standing Committee on Crime Intelligence, you get asked specific questions on crime intelligence, and you find it difficult to engage on matters and account when you don't know anything. You are just sitting there, even when you have a feeling that there's something that is not good. I don't consider that as interference.
So the solution to that problem you've articulated is to freeze all posts in crime intelligence. The fact that you don't understand how crime intelligence works, the solution to that problem is to freeze posts.
The solution is to have a meeting with the National Commissioner.
Indeed.
So that when they start recruiting at the beginning of the year, you have passed that kind of meeting. You are one in terms of how things should go forward.
What about the exercise of the core mandate of crime intelligence did you have concern about?
One of them was to say, we have identified, when we engaged with crime intelligence, we said one of the areas of concern is that ministry has identified a number of priorities flowing from the national priorities, and we listed them. Part of what we listed was our concern and prioritization of murder, firearms, drugs, and so on. And we said, we don't have a feel that crime intelligence is assisting police at a level that it is required to deal with these particular problems, especially in relation to particular areas in the country, in the 4 provinces that I called high murder rates.
Yes, you
so
referenced
it
them.
was. So we wanted to get intelligence at a high level, to be seen to be active, so that we are able to be precise in dealing with high murder zones in different provinces. They should be active and assist us. And indeed, at some point, I held a meeting with National Commissioner to say, the Western Cape is a high murder zone, the Cape Flats. Can you send intelligence so that you are able to assist your deployments, and then they go there and so on. Later, when I met, incidentally, Lieutenant Khumalo, he said no, they had not discussed the matter with the National Commissioner. There was some time, 2 or 3 weeks later. That was the discoordination that I was concerned about.
Okay.
When you took your decision on 31 December 2024, were you aware that the mandate of the PKTT had been extended to deal with cases involving the killings of traditional leaders?
When I wrote
Yes,
the
disbandment letter.
yes, we were aware.
Were you aware?
Yes.
Now, how did you think they were going to fulfill that mandate if they were already disbanded?
How did I?
How did you think or expect that they would fulfill that mandate if you wanted them disbanded?
It would be through murder and robbery.
But murder and robbery already existed when the mandate was extended to include the killings of traditional leaders.
That is exactly the concern that was identified in the Marai report, and it is part of the list that you are reading, possible double parking on matters, because there's no reason why murder and robbery wouldn't deal with matters associated with traditional leadership. There's no reason.
So if National Commissioner and his subordinates determine that it should be the PKTT that deals with the killings of traditional leaders, you say you can overrule them and decide that it must be dealt with by murder and robbery?
You know why and through what? You will go to Mpumalanga, there's no PKTT there. And if traditional leaders have a problem, you wouldn't say murder and robbery must not deal with it. They would deal with it, which is what we would want to see in the country. Murder and robbery dealing with all murders in a sustainable way. And this is what we were driving things towards, to make sure that whatever skill that gets developed, it's maintained, it's sustained, it is honed and sharpened all the time, as opposed to having a team and on a temporal basis.
I don't think you are correct when you say if you go to Mpumalanga, there's no PKTT, because if you go to file 2 of 2, your exhibits bundle on page 253, that briefing to the last IMC meeting and the briefing note that Minister Cele at the time prepared, he says, the work of the task team extends beyond KZN borders. Its work has also been exemplary in the investigation and ultimate breakthrough of murders in the Fort Hare, in the Eastern Cape, where 8 people have been arrested and are before the courts. Next paragraph, the task team is also assisting in investigations in the Limpopo and Mpumalanga provinces. And as we know, in December 2024, 10 of those members were then sent to Gauteng to assist the GCIS ops. So they were operating in 5 provinces, not the KZN. Were you aware of that?
Well, I wasn't aware of Mpumalanga. I was just making an example.
No, I thought you said they are not in Mpumalanga. That's why I was correcting you.
I was making an example that if Amakosi die there and there's no PKTT, you would expect that murder and robbery would deal with those matters in the context that we're discussing.
I've just shown you that they assisted in those provinces. So what do you say now?
Now, I want to say I acknowledge what you're saying, that they went there to assist. It could be any number, but I'm insisting that the ideal position is not to do that. The ideal situation is for capacity to be built in Mpumalanga, capacity to be built in Limpopo, and so on. And they deal with the matters as per structure that we have.
And the reason they came to assist in Gauteng was precisely because the resources in Gauteng did not have the same capacity that PKTT had. That's why some of the PKTT members were seconded to the teams in Gauteng to assist in the investigation of certain matters.